facial recognition, biometric privacy, and bending spoons strikes again. This is MacVoices. This MacVoices is supported by TV Plus Talk, our MacVoices series with Charlotte Henry focused on Apple TV. From shows and other content to the business side, there's always something to learn about Apple's streaming service. Find it at macvoices.com/TV Plus Talk. Okay, so we have a new lawsuit. And this one I think is really interesting. Apple Photos facial features prompt a $32.5 billion class action lawsuit from Apple Insider. And if I understand this correctly, it has to do with Apple doing facial recognition on your photos and having it be allowed to recognize photos without the user's permission. And I'm assuming that the way I read it is that's you, the user, that it just started doing this in the background. And we all said, oh, this is great, because it's going back and tagging people that, once we identify someone as one person, then it starts to sort through all the photos. And so, okay, I kind of see their point. I'm not sure that it's not a little too late. I'm also not sure it's not somebody looking to try to cash in. But this didn't feel, because it's being done, I guess it's not being done on my device. I guess it's going through Apple's servers. But I need more information on this one to know how I feel. But is this potentially a real issue? Brian, any thoughts?
When I was taking a look at this, I was thinking, for one, like you were thinking, is this on the device or is this something that Apple does have? Is it there? Is that data shared with Apple? And I don't know, it feels okay to me. I mean, in the sense that, it stays within that app. It's only, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're tagging your own photos. It identifies things that look similar to one another. And you say, oh yeah, that's me. You give it a name, and then that way later on you can search for me, and the photos that resemble me based on that come up. So it feels like this isn't in this, I don't know, maybe spirit of the rule or the law versus the actual legal context of it. It seems like it would be something that I wouldn't be upset with Apple over, as far as the claim of, biometric data being collected.
Barry in the chat room says, Jason Snell pointed out on Upgrade that the auto face recognition is device specific and does not sync. It's only the manual tagging of people that users do that gets synced in iCloud Photos. Okay. So if it's only on device, then, and again, if I don't think I read this wrong, but I kind of had the impression that they were saying that you would have to go out and ask whoever you took pictures of, and they're in your photo library, to get permission so that it can be scanned. Now, maybe that's not the way it's intended. Maybe I just misread it, but I'm just not quite sure. I'm confused. Marty, any does this bother you? Should this be worthy of a lawsuit?
For me, it's a question of whose action, is it the user, or is it that Apple's that's creating this tagging or responsibility? And is the user informed ahead of time that the biometrics are being used and wherever they're being run or calculated? That's where kind of for me, where the lawsuit lives or dies, in terms of how well informed users are about it and who's taking the actual action. Is it Apple or is it user? There's a case here where they talk about on-device kind of facial recognition, and it doesn't sync. That could be that could be the issue with the case all around.
Well, if Jason's right, and Barry says someone needs to send Jason's take control of photos to the judge, then it's on device. And why should I be prevented from using something that's only on device? And how is that violating? If I have a bunch of pictures of Marty in my photos from MacStock, and it's recognizing him and building that facial recognition, but it's not synced anywhere. And the only thing that is synced is if I take that particular profile and say, okay, this is Marty Jencius. I'm really struggling with it. I kind of get where, to Brian's point, I kind of get where the spirit is, but I'm not sure I agree with the way it's headed. Eric, you're awfully quiet. Thoughts on
debating. So all of the initial stuff is on device, and I think there's absolutely no problem with it. But if on your device you go through the there are a bunch of pictures of this person. Do you want to add a name in? You can add a name, whatever you want, and it collects all of that on your device. If you then take that grouping of pictures and then create an album or whatever, that gets synced across all your devices. Now that's not, so there's biometrics used to help you gather all the images together, but you're still the one creating the album. So I don't know if there's just kind of confusion over which parts of that exist. The other thing is it's on device, and if you have another device and it identifies who all the people are, it kind of looks like it's working across multiple devices going through iCloud. And that doesn't appear to be the case, or at least as far as how I understand it works. So, it may just be that what is actually happening has to be clarified, but it's going to be a whole lot easier to use your device to identify a bunch of images, group them together, put them in some spot, and then have all of that information synchronized to all of your different devices so they all have the same albums, and you can conveniently hop from device to device. And then the question is, well, who made that possible in iCloud, and is any of that considered biometric data? And I don't understand the Illinois rules enough, but I would hope that it doesn't get to the point where, Apple has to say, well, everybody gets to use photos except for Illinois, because that would be painful.
Okay, so first of all, you brought up something that I kind of forgotten as I got lost in the mix, and that is that this is based on an Illinois law. So it's, we're back to the discussion of states and even countries trying to regulate different things. But again, this is something that I do for myself. And I definitely the user should maybe have been asked. I honestly can't remember if I was ever asked, did I want to use whatever the Apple term is for facial recognition on my photos. I kind of think I did, and I definitely would have said sure, because what's it going to cost? But if it wasn't set up that way, but that also was probably at a time before there was so much paranoia over everything being tagged and identified and all. But even so, this seems to stay within the walled garden. It's not like I'm sending the profile of Eric Bolden out to somebody else that could be used to recognize him when he's out at undisclosed locations.
Yeah, and this is very different from, like, say, Facebook, having you tag somebody in images, and then everybody who follows somebody else all of a sudden knows who that person is and where they were. That's a fair amount of data. But, frankly, if you take a picture and upload a picture and it has a location and a time and when the picture was taken, does it I guess it matters if something is able to generate the data and then you upload it. This is just a case of the laws not quite matching up with recent changes in technology, or most likely somebody misunderstanding what is being done on device and mixing it up with something being done on a bunch of servers, like Google Photos or Facebook photos or something like that. And there is a difference, and it might be subtle enough that wasn't being recognized so far in the lawsuit. Hopefully, I guess I don't mind this kind of lawsuit because hopefully it allows Apple to kind of clarify what's happening, explain it, and document it. Yeah, it's a big expense for them, but maybe that'll help other states know what to do with their laws and how to clarify it. So.
Yeah, because other states will have lawsuits, unfortunately. Barry says, didn't this feature begin in iPhoto? I think it was originally called Faces. Now they call it People. Yeah, I think so. And that's how far back it's been. And that's where I can't remember if I was asked if I wanted to turn this feature on or not.
They did ask, and you can do pets too. And the identification, I think you have to do. Like, it'll group pictures that are say, these are all this person. And then it asks for confirmation, are these all this person? And, do you want to add a name or something else? So
is that enough? Is that enough of a notification that if you're asked to identify them, that obviously you're identifying them?
Yeah, and it's still on device at that point.
Yeah. And I know, I got to believe that this was something that you were asked to turn on, because there was, back then, it required a lot more of the processing power of your Mac to do this, the percentage wise, than what it does now. So again, this one doesn't feel as questionable as some of the other lawsuits. I'm not necessarily sure I like it, but it just doesn't feel quite as bad. A few weeks ago, we talked about TV Time going out of business. And so I threw a piece into the show notes. There's a new TV tracking app called Bingers that is available now for you to use. Anybody using this or heard of it? Or because I think we did have some TV Time users here, at least with the panel that discussed it then. So if you needed a TV tracking app, check it out and let us know what you think. But where was this from? This was from 9 to 5 Mac that they pointed it out. Okay, so we've been talking about bending spoons now for quite a while, back when nobody had heard of bending spoons, and how they were buying things up. Well, now they've agreed to acquire Airtable in an all-cash deal valuing the U.S. software company at $1.25 billion, set to close by 2026 end. Its first IPO deal. And this is one we talked about the IPO a couple weeks ago. They have bought up Evernote. They bought up Vimeo. I know I'm going to forget one or two others that we've talked about, but they seem to be gathering up an interesting little stable of companies that aren't necessarily related. And I don't think I realized how widespread Airtable was, and what widespread use it was. This apparently is something that a lot of folks use in lieu of a database. Anybody here use Airtable?
What do you mean in lieu of a database?
Sorry, Jim, you broke up.
I don't know why you're saying in lieu of a database. It is a database.
It is? Okay.
And all I can say is, they're one of my competitors, and what am I doing wrong?
So do we have you ever played with it, Jim?
Spoons, my number is.
Yeah. Has anybody played with this or used it at all?
Airtable?
Yeah.
A little bit. Competitive analysis.
Yeah, that's fair. It's one of those apps that I've had on my need to check out list, and I just never get to it because I really don't. I'd be looking for something. Now, I know the people that use it seem to think that they can't live without it, and they find uses for it. So, obviously, somebody thought it was worth something because it's 1.25 billion valuation.
Although I saw something about the revenue, which, although much higher than my company's revenue, much higher, but it's nowhere near high enough to justify the kind of valuations that we're talking about. So puzzling.
So if you're an Airtable user, watch out. Dave?
I knew I remember this, but I don't know if I should bring it up or not. I remembered Allison wrote a piece many years ago about she finally understands how databases work, and Airtable was one of the things that she used, the free Airtable app. So there's some people out there that are trying this, and she, how she has with all her stuff, but yeah, so it did have some. I remember her doing this review. She might have even done a screencast online on it too. So it's obviously used out there.
I've definitely been hearing about it for quite a few years.
Apparently, it has a fair audience in government for doing things that I guess they kind of quick and, well, I better not do that. I was going to say quick and dirty, but hopefully the government isn't doing anything quick and dirty.
Well, I think that is where the Airtable market is. Especially, you can do a fair amount with the free version, but it's pretty limited. It doesn't have a big, like up end. So, you could start doing something and then, but I think it's something that's, pretty easy for non-technical people to get into. So, it's kind of like a step above Google Sheets, and it's a similar product, I think, to Google Sheets.
Okay. Well, again, if you're an Airtable user, let us hear from you and let us know what you think. Or as we go down the line here, see what changes they make to
it. There's been.
Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah.
I was going to say it's kind of semi-related. There's been a thread on the ATP, Accidental Tech Podcast, the last several episodes about FileMaker. And I guess they made some comment on one of the shows like, oh, is FileMaker still around? And I guess they heard from quite a few people that, what are you talking about? Of course, it's still around. And then John Syracuse was like, basically like, oh, well, okay, I guess it's still around, but nobody should use it. And, he was like, just vibe code something.
Jim, I wasn't going to go there, but that was one of the first things I thought about. That from what I know about Airtable, are people, not everyone is going to vibe code something, but is that a threat to this? Is this one of those things of software as a service is under the gun by vibe coding? So,
I think it's at some area of it probably is, but I don't think it's a majorly. I thought John's argument was kind of like ridiculous. It's like, well, so is he advising that people should stop using Microsoft Word? Just vibe code a word processor. I mean, there's, people don't want to code everything themselves. There's something to be said for a solution that starts out of the box and, you're not starting at the low level and building pieces, at the lowest level. You want to start at, somebody's already put together. It's like, oh yeah, why are you buying a car? Just, buy a bunch of parts and put them together.
It might be interesting to vibe code word processor. Just with the features you want.
I'm not saying nobody should do it, but to say that, well, John was basically saying nobody should use a database program.
Yeah, that's not really realistic. I mean, it all depends on your use case. So,
Chuck, if I could,
a couple
of things. And I don't want to talk about the Airtable acquisition. I'm more interested in Bending Spoons. We've talked about them on the show before, so I don't want to belabor the conversation on that. But they're really interesting. First of all, they gotta have 2 metric tons of cash for some of these deals that they're doing and some of the money that they're putting out. Now, I'm not sure if it's all, in this case, 1.3 billion all cash or what. It doesn't matter. But they seem to be going in. I've just been looking at Wikipedia, because if it's in Wikipedia, it's got to be true, right? But looking at some of the other acquisitions that they've done about Eventbrite and whatever was left of AOL when they bought that. I think they bought that for the name, by the way. But but they've been through, like we said, 1.3 billion here and several $100 million, if not billion-dollar deals, at least about a dozen of them that I'm seeing on here. And on some of them, they've gone in and bought the assets and liquidated the staff. Okay. And there are a couple of them here that I've read that they got rid of 2/3 of the staff, not all of them, but I'm interested to see what Bending Spoons' long-term plan is, and whether they want to be this conglomerate or whether it's just an asset deal where they buy them, spin them out one way or the other, and try to generate cash that way. So it's just interesting how they're doing it. So, and what they're doing that we really don't know. So,
well, Webb, the only product I can think of right now that I'm a frequent user of, and I know Jim is too, is Vimeo. And when Bending Spoons acquired them shortly after that, I know there was a big kerfuffle about how many of the staff were laid off. But I started to see changes in the service. Some, honestly, were good and probably were overdue. Others looked to me like, they were kind of sloppy and not very in keeping with the interface that Vimeo had developed. And there's still one feature about uploading a thumbnail that still feels really, really clunky to me. Other than that, I'm not going to say it's untouched, but it's kind of gone left or right. It really hasn't gone up or down. So I think it's going to be interesting to see, and what is their end game, as you said, with this interesting little portfolio of companies they're putting together.
The price has gone up, although so far it's not, catastrophically so.
Yeah, and you sort of figured that would be the case. So, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, you go on their website, they say we acquire and improve iconic products. I'm like, okay. I just look at some of the other things that I forgot that they have AOL now, and they have StreamYard, Brightcove. I mean, Everbright and Meetup. I mean, they have a lot of companies here that they've just scooped up. WeTransfer was popular too. So they got quite the portfolio.
They had Meetup. Meetup is a company that's really
since 2024 they've had it.
Yeah, that company is, that's terrible. And I know a lot of people that are abandoning Meetup because it's just turned into the prices have gone up through the roof. And
even Eventbrite, they just picked that up in March of this year. So I mean, they're going crazy. I mean,
Eventbrite
AOL is
that what you said? Eventbrite?
Yeah.
Eventbrite.
Brite.
That's the ticket.
Interesting.
EVENT. Right. That's a ticketing
Yeah, no, I know about that
platform.
I had not heard that they picked that up, and that's going to be interesting too.
Well, and that's it. You think about just what the companies we just mentioned. They're so widely diversified. It's not like they're trying to corner the market in event registration or video hosting or anything like that. It's just they seem to be dipping their toes in a lot of different places, and maybe in some places
like
having
GE
success.
Under Jack Welch.
That's interesting comparison, Jim. Yeah. So, hey, we'll see what we'll talk about next time with Bending Spoons, because it doesn't look like they're done anytime soon. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.